If you could rewind your life to the moment of your greatest failure, your worst decision, the thing you most regret, and change it, would you? Before you answer, consider this. Everything you love about your present life is downstream from that moment. The person you became, the people you met, the places you ended up, all of it flows from the wreckage of the thing you wish had never happened. So would you change it? Would you erase the failure if it meant erasing everything that came after? Most people, when they really think about it, say no. They say, I would not be who I am without that. They say, it had to happen. They say, everything happens for a reason. But here is what I find strange. The moment they are living through the failure, the job loss, the breakup, the diagnosis, the betrayal, they do not feel like it is happening for a reason. They feel like the world is ending. They feel like they have been singled out for suffering. They feel like the universe has made a terrible mistake. It is only later, sometimes years later, that the reason appears, that the pattern emerges, that the disaster reveals itself to have been, all along, a door. So which is true? Is the universe watching over us, arranging our suffering into meaningful shapes? Or is something else happening? Something stranger? Something that says more about who we are than about what the universe is? I need to tell you about a man named Viktor Frankl. In 1942, Frankl was a successful psychiatrist in Vienna. He had a wife, a family, a practice. He had spent years developing a new approach to therapy, one focused not on pleasure or power, but on meaning. He called it logotherapy. The logos, the word, the reason. Then the Nazis came. Frankl was Jewish. He was arrested and sent to Auschwitz. His wife was sent to Bergen-Belsen, where she would die. His mother was sent to the gas chambers. His brother died in a mining camp. His father starved to death in another camp. Everything Frankl had built, everything he loved, was erased. He spent 3 years in the camps. He watched people die every day. He was starved, beaten, stripped of everything that makes a person a person. He had every reason to conclude that life was meaningless, that suffering was random, that the universe was either cruel or indifferent. But Frankl noticed something strange. The people who survived the camps were not always the strongest or the healthiest. They were the ones who had something to live for, a child waiting for them, a book they needed to write, a person they needed to see again. The ones who had a reason, even an invented reason, even a reason they had constructed from nothing. Those were the ones who lasted. After the war, Frankl wrote a book about this. He called it Man's Search for Meaning. It has sold over 16 million copies. It is one of the most influential books of the 20th century. And the core idea is this: humans do not need comfort. We do not need safety. We do not even need happiness. What we need, more than anything, is meaning. And meaning is not something we find. It is something we create. Frankl did not survive the camps because the universe had a plan for him. He survived because he made a plan for himself. He decided that his suffering would mean something. He decided that he would write about it, teach about it, transform it into something that could help others. The reason his suffering happened was not written in the stars. It was written by him, afterward, in the act of looking back and deciding what it would mean. This is what I want to explore with you. Not whether things happen for a reason, but why it feels like they do. Not whether the universe has a plan, but why we need to believe it does. And not whether that belief is true, but whether it matters if it is. Because I think something important is hiding in that question. Something about who we are, something about the strange power we have to transform our own lives simply by changing the story we tell about them. We are not just characters in a story. We are the authors, and the act of authorship changes everything. Let me start with the brain. There is a phenomenon in psychology called apophenia. It is the tendency to perceive meaningful connections between unrelated things. You think of a friend you have not seen in years, and then they call you that afternoon. You dream about water, and the next day it rains. You meet someone at a party, and later you discover you were born in the same hospital. These feel like signs. They feel like the universe is winking at you, letting you know that something larger is at work, that you are part of a pattern, that your life is not random but orchestrated. But apophenia is not evidence of cosmic design. It is evidence of how your brain works. Your brain is a pattern recognition machine. That is what it evolved to do. For millions of years, your ancestors survived by noticing patterns. The rustle in the grass that meant a predator. The change in the sky that meant a storm. The expression on a face that meant danger or safety. Pattern recognition kept us alive. And so our brains became very, very good at it. So good that we see patterns even when they are not there. We connect dots that have no connection. We find meaning in randomness because finding meaning in randomness once saved our lives. And the brain never learned to stop. This is why you remember the time you thought of someone and they called, but you forget the thousands of times you thought of someone and they did not call. This is why coincidences feel significant even when they are statistically inevitable. This is why the universe seems to be speaking to you when it is, in fact, silent. Your brain is lying to you, beautifully, constantly. And the lie feels like truth. But here is where it gets interesting. Because the lie is not just a bug in the system, it is also a feature. A psychologist named Dan McAdams has spent decades studying something he calls narrative identity. His research shows that human beings do not just have experiences. We turn our experiences into stories, and the stories we tell about ourselves become the selves we are. You are not a collection of facts. You are a narrative, a story with a beginning, a middle, and a direction. A protagonist moving through time, facing challenges, learning lessons, becoming someone. This is not optional. This is how human consciousness works. We cannot experience our lives as a random sequence of events. We have to storify them. We have to find the plot. And McAdams discovered something crucial. The content of your story matters less than its structure. People who tell redemption stories, stories where suffering leads to growth, where failure leads to wisdom, where bad things become good things, those people are psychologically healthier than people who tell contamination stories, where good things turn bad, where hope curdles into despair. This does not mean redemption stories are true and contamination stories are false. It means we have a choice about which story to tell. The same events can be narrated either way. The same life can be a tragedy or a comedy, depending on where you put the emphasis. This is the power I am pointing at. Not the power to change what happened, the power to change what it means, the power to take the same raw material and forge it into a different story. McAdams calls the people who do this, well, generative adults. They are the ones who have taken their suffering and turned it into something they can give to others. They are the ones who have found a way to make their pain useful. They are not lucky. They are not blessed. They are authors. They have decided what their story means, and that decision has become who they are. There is another phenomenon, related but distinct. Psychologists call it hindsight bias. When you look back at your life, everything seems inevitable. Of course you ended up in this city. Of course you married this person. Of course you chose this career. The path from there to here looks clear, straight, almost predestined. But when you were living it, nothing was clear. You were confused. You were making decisions with incomplete information. You were guessing, hoping, stumbling forward in the dark. Hindsight bias is the brain's tendency to rewrite history so that the present seems like the only possible outcome. It takes the chaos of lived experience and smooths it into a narrative. It makes the accidental look intentional. It makes the random look designed. This is useful. It helps us learn from the past. It helps us feel in control. It helps us sleep at night. But it also creates an illusion. The illusion that our lives are following a script. That someone wrote the ending before we started. That every twist and turn was plotted in advance. The truth is messier. The truth is that you could have ended up anywhere. That 1,000 different versions of your life were possible. That the one you are living is not the inevitable result of cosmic planning, but the arbitrary product of 1,000,000 tiny accidents, each one leading to the next. None of them meaning anything until you decided they did. So if the universe is not arranging things for our benefit, and if our brains are constructing patterns that do not exist, why do we still feel so strongly that everything happens for a reason? I think the answer has to do with terror. There is a theory in psychology called terror management theory. It sounds dramatic because it is. The theory proposes that human beings are the only animals who know they are going to die. We are aware of our own mortality in a way that other creatures are not, and this awareness creates a problem. How do you live a normal life when you know it will end? How do you get out of bed, go to work, love someone, build something, when you know that all of it will eventually be erased? The answer, according to terror management theory, is meaning. We construct systems of meaning. Religions, cultures, ideologies, personal narratives that make us feel like our lives matter, like we are part of something larger, like our existence has significance beyond the brief flicker of our individual consciousness. The belief that everything happens for a reason is one of these constructions. It is a defense against the terror of randomness, because if things happen for no reason, then your suffering is pointless. Your achievements are accidents. Your life is a series of events that could have happened to anyone, signifying nothing. But if things happen for a reason, then even your worst moments have purpose. Your suffering is not meaningless, but educational. Your failures are not random, but formative. You are not a speck of dust blown around by an indifferent wind. You are a protagonist in a story that is going somewhere. This belief is not true in the sense of being objectively verifiable, but it is useful. It is necessary. It is what allows us to keep going when the alternative is despair. But here I want to be careful, because the belief that everything happens for a reason can become toxic. It can curdle into something harmful. And I think we need to look at that before we can move forward. There is a concept called the just world fallacy. It is the belief that people get what they deserve, that good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people, that the universe is fundamentally fair. This belief is comforting when good things happen to you. You must have earned it. You must be doing something right. The universe is rewarding you for your virtue, but it becomes monstrous when applied to suffering. If everything happens for a reason, then what is the reason for the child who gets cancer? What is the reason for the village destroyed by a flood? What is the reason for the person born into poverty, into violence, into circumstances they did not choose and cannot escape? The just world fallacy says, There must be a reason. They must have done something. They must deserve it somehow. And this is not just wrong. It is cruel. It takes the arbitrary distribution of suffering and pretends it is justice. I have heard people say everything happens for a reason to someone who just lost a child. I have heard it said to people whose lives were destroyed by random violence. And in those moments, the phrase is not comforting. It is an assault. It is a demand that the person find meaning in something that may have no meaning. It is a refusal to sit with the simple, terrible truth that sometimes bad things happen to good people for no reason at all. So I want to be clear. I am not arguing that the universe has a plan. I am not arguing that your suffering is secretly good for you. I am not arguing that you should paste a smiley face over your pain and pretend it was all meant to be. Some things are just terrible. Some losses cannot be redeemed. Some suffering teaches nothing except that suffering exists. The question is what you do with that. Albert Camus wrote an essay called The Myth of Sisyphus. It is about the most fundamental philosophical question, whether life is worth living in the face of absurdity. Camus looked at the universe and saw what the scientists see. No inherent meaning, no cosmic plan, no reason why you exist rather than do not exist. Just matter and energy, arranging and rearranging, indifferent to human hopes. He called this the absurd, the gap between our need for meaning and the universe's silence, the collision between our demand that life makes sense and the world's refusal to comply. And Camus asked, what do we do with this? Do we despair? Do we pretend the absurdity is not there? Do we leap into religious belief or ideological certainty, anything to escape the silence? His answer was stranger than any of those options. He said, we acknowledge the absurdity. We accept that the universe does not care. And then we create meaning anyway. Not because it is cosmically true, but because it is humanly necessary. He imagined Sisyphus, the figure from Greek mythology, condemned to roll a boulder up a hill for eternity, only to watch it roll back down each time. A meaningless task, an absurd punishment. And Camus said, we must imagine Sisyphus happy, not because the task has meaning, because Sisyphus gives it meaning, because in the act of pushing the boulder, of engaging with the absurd, of refusing to surrender to pointlessness, Sisyphus creates something. He creates himself. He creates his own reason for being. This is what I think we do with our lives. Not find meaning, create it. Not discover the reason things happen, invent the reason. After the fact, looking backward. Friedrich Nietzsche had a phrase for this. He called it Amor Fati, love of fate. Not acceptance of fate, not resignation to fate. Love, active, passionate, wholehearted love for everything that has happened to you, including the suffering, including the failures, including the things you would never have chosen. Nietzsche wrote, my formula for greatness in a human being is Amor Fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. This sounds insane. Want nothing to be different, not even the worst moments, not even the suffering that seemed to serve no purpose. But Nietzsche had a thought experiment that makes it clearer. He called it the eternal return. Imagine that a demon appeared to you in your loneliest moment and said, this life, as you have lived it, you will have to live again and innumerable times again. Every pain and every joy, every thought and every sigh, everything unspeakably small or great in your life will return to you, all in the same succession and sequence. How would you respond? Would you curse the demon? Would you fall into despair at the thought of living your suffering over and over, forever? Or would you say, yes, this is my life. I choose it. I would choose it again. I would choose it eternally. Nietzsche was not asking whether you liked your life. He was asking whether you could affirm it, whether you could say yes to the whole thing, including the parts you did not choose, including the parts that broke you. Because the self who wishes things had been different is the self who does not exist. If things had been different, you would be different. The person wishing is a product of the things they are wishing away. To truly love your life, you have to love the path that created it. All of it. The wrong turns, the dead ends, the moments of despair. Because those moments are not separate from the good ones. They are the foundation of the good ones. They are upstream of everything you value. This is not the same as saying everything happens for a reason. It is saying, I will make it have happened for a reason. I will take the raw material of my life, including the parts I did not choose, and I will forge it into something. Not because the universe demanded it, because I do. Let me tell you a story about Steve Jobs. In 2005, Jobs gave a commencement speech at Stanford. He was already famous, already successful, already the visionary who had transformed multiple industries. And he told the graduates something that has stayed with me for years. He told them about dropping out of college, about how it seemed like a disaster at the time. His parents had saved for years to send him to school, and he was throwing it away. He had no idea what he wanted to do. He was sleeping on the floor of friends' rooms, returning bottles for food money. But because he had dropped out, he could drop into classes that interested him. One of those was a calligraphy course. He learned about typefaces, about spacing, about the art of beautiful lettering. It seemed useless at the time. It had no practical application. 10 years later, Jobs was designing the Macintosh, and he remembered the calligraphy course. He built beautiful typography into the Mac. It became one of the things that distinguished Apple from every other computer company. It changed the way the entire world thinks about design. Jobs said, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. This is often quoted as evidence that the universe has a plan, that if you follow your heart, things will work out, that there is a hidden logic to life that reveals itself in time. But I do not think that is what Jobs was saying. I think he was saying something more radical. He was saying that the connections do not exist until you make them, that the dots are just dots until you draw the lines, that the meaning of your past is not fixed but fluid, waiting to be shaped by what you do next. Jobs did not drop out of college because the universe knew he would need calligraphy. He dropped out because he was lost. The calligraphy was an accident. The Macintosh was years away. The connection only existed in hindsight, drawn by a man looking backward and deciding what his story meant. He was not a character discovering a predetermined plot. He was an author, writing the plot as he went, revising the earlier chapters to fit the later ones. There is an old Chinese parable that captures this perfectly. A farmer's horse runs away. His neighbors come to console him. What terrible luck, they say. The farmer shrugs. Good luck, bad luck, who knows? The next week, the horse returns, bringing with it 3 wild horses. The neighbors come to celebrate. What wonderful luck, they say. The farmer shrugs. Good luck, bad luck, who knows? The farmer's son tries to ride one of the wild horses, falls, and breaks his leg. The neighbors come to console him again. What terrible luck, they say. The farmer shrugs. Good luck, bad luck, who knows? The next month, the army comes through the village, conscripting all the young men for a war. They pass over the farmer's son because of his broken leg. The neighbors are astonished. What wonderful luck! The farmer shrugs. This story is usually told as a lesson in patience. Wait long enough and you will see why things happened. The universe has a plan. You just cannot see it yet. But I read it differently now. The farmer is not patient because he trusts in cosmic wisdom. He is patient because he understands something about the nature of events and meaning. He understands that the meaning is not in the event. The meaning is in what comes after, and what comes after is not determined yet. The horse running away is not good or bad. It is just a horse running away. The broken leg is not good or bad. It is just a broken leg. The meaning arrives later when the sun is not conscripted, when the wild horses are tamed, when the next chapter reveals what the previous chapter was for. But even then, the meaning is not final. The story continues. The son who was not conscripted might resent his father for letting him break his leg. The wild horses might bring disease to the farm. The meaning keeps shifting as the story keeps unfolding. The farmer's wisdom is not that he knows the meaning. It is that he knows the meaning is not fixed, that every event is raw material, waiting to be shaped by what comes next, that the author has not finished writing. This is what I mean when I say we are alchemists. In medieval times, alchemists tried to transform lead into gold. They failed, of course. Lead does not become gold through any process available to human beings. But there is a transformation that is possible. A transformation that happens not in a laboratory, but in a mind. The transformation of accident into meaning, of suffering into wisdom, of random events into a coherent story. This is what Frankl did in the camps. This is what Jobs did with his failures. This is what every human being does every day when they look at their past and decide what it means. We take the lead of our lives, the mistakes, the losses, the things that should never have happened, and we turn it into gold, not by changing what happened, but by changing what it means, by writing it into a story that serves us, by making it a chapter in a book that is going somewhere. The alchemy is not magical, it is narrative. It is the human capacity to take any experience and give it a place in a larger whole, to say, this happened so that this could happen, to say, I went through that so I could become this. The universe did not arrange your suffering into a meaningful shape. You did, looking backward, connecting the dots, writing the story. And the fact that you did it, rather than the universe, does not make it less real. It makes it more real. Because it means the meaning is yours. You own it. You created it. It cannot be taken away. I want to talk about the new year. There is something strange about January, about the way the calendar flips and suddenly everything feels possible, about the way millions of people all over the world make resolutions, promises to themselves, declarations that this year will be different. Why do we do this? The day after December 31st is not actually different from the day before. The planet is in the same place. Your body is the same body. Your problems are the same problems. Nothing has changed except a number on a calendar. And yet we feel it. The freshness, the possibility, the sense that we are standing at the beginning of something, that the past is behind us, that we can become whoever we want to be. I think this is evidence of what I have been talking about. The human capacity to create meaning through narrative, to draw a line and say, everything before this line is the old story, everything after is the new one. The new year is a collective act of authorship. We all agree, together, to treat January 1st as a beginning. And because we agree, it becomes one. Not because of astronomy, not because of cosmic significance, because we decided. This is what we do with our entire lives, compressed into a single moment. We look at where we have been, we decide what it meant, and we write the next chapter. The resolutions are not really about losing weight or learning a language or being more productive. They are about asserting authorship, claiming the right to revise your own story, saying, I am not just a product of what happened to me. I am the one who decides what happens next. But I also want to say something about the resolutions that fail, because most of them do. The statistics are brutal. Most people abandon their New Year's resolutions within weeks. The gym that was crowded in January is empty by March. The journal that was going to capture every thought lies untouched after the first entry. The new self that was going to emerge retreats back into the old patterns. And this feels like defeat, like evidence that we cannot really change, like the story is already written and we are just characters acting out our predetermined roles. But I do not think that is what it means. I think the failed resolutions are just as much evidence of our authorship as the successful ones. Because the failure is not the end of the story, it is material for the next chapter. The person who tried to change and failed is not the same as the person who never tried at all. The attempt matters. The intention matters. Even the failure becomes part of the narrative, part of the raw material that the future self will use to construct meaning. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, the pattern shifts. The resolution that failed for 5 years succeeds in the 6th. The change that seemed impossible suddenly becomes inevitable. Not because the universe decided it was time, because you kept writing, you kept revising, you kept treating your life as a story that was still being told. I want to tell you something personal now. There was a year in my life that felt like the end of everything. I will not give you the details because the details do not matter. What matters is that I was certain at the time that I had made an irreversible mistake, that I had destroyed something that could not be rebuilt, that the story of my life had taken a wrong turn from which there was no recovery. I spent months in that certainty. I replayed the decisions I had made. I imagined the alternate timelines where I had chosen differently. I was haunted by the version of my life that should have been, that would have been, if only I had been smarter or braver or more careful. And then, slowly, something shifted. Not the circumstances. The circumstances remained what they were. What shifted was my relationship to them. I began to see the failure differently, not as an ending, but as a transformation. Not as a wrong turn, but as the only turn that could have led to where I was going. I do not know if I believe this. I do not know if the story I now tell about that year is true in any cosmic sense. Maybe I am just a brain constructing patterns, finding meaning where there is none, lying to myself so beautifully that I cannot tell it is a lie. But I also know this. The story I tell now is better than the story I was telling then. It is more useful. It is more livable. It allows me to wake up in the morning and feel like my life is going somewhere, rather than feeling like it has already ended. And if that is an illusion, it is an illusion I have chosen, an illusion I have authored, an illusion that belongs to me. Here is what I think I believe at the end of all this thinking. I do not believe the universe has a plan for you. I do not believe there is a cosmic author arranging your suffering into meaningful shapes. I do not believe that things happen for a reason, if by reason you mean a purpose that exists independent of human interpretation. But I do believe in the human capacity to create reason, to look at the chaos of experience and weave it into narrative, to take the accidents of a life and decide, retroactively, what they meant. This is not a lesser belief, it is a greater one, because it means the meaning is not given to you from above. It is forged by you in the fire of your own living. It is yours in a way that no external meaning could ever be. You are not a character in someone else's story. You are the author of your own. And the act of authorship is not a metaphor. It is the most literal description of what you do every day, every moment, every time you take what happened and decide what it means. The feeling that things happen for a reason is not evidence that the universe cares about you. It is evidence that you care about yourself, that you are doing the work of meaning-making that only a human being can do, that you are transforming lead into gold, accident into purpose, chaos into story. You are an alchemist. You always have been. The only question is whether you do the alchemy consciously or let it happen to you without understanding what you are doing. I want to leave you with one more thought. There is a difference between finding meaning and creating meaning. Finding implies that the meaning is out there, waiting to be discovered. Creating implies that the meaning does not exist until you make it. The first view is more comforting. It suggests that even when you cannot see the meaning, it is there. That even when you are lost, you are on the right path. That even when everything falls apart, a larger plan is unfolding. The second view is more challenging. It places the burden on you. It says that if your life does not have meaning, it is because you have not created it yet. It says that the meaning is your responsibility, your task, your gift to yourself. But the second view is also more empowering, because it means the meaning can never be taken away from you. No one can come along and tell you that your interpretation is wrong, that your story does not make sense, that the meaning you created is not valid. It is yours. You made it. It exists because you exist. And when things fall apart, when the story you have been telling stops working, when the meaning you created crumbles, you can create again. You can write a new chapter. You can revise the narrative. You can take the same raw material and forge it into something different. This is not denial. This is not pretending that suffering does not hurt or that loss does not devastate. It is saying that even the suffering, even the loss, can become part of a story that is worth telling. That even the worst chapters can lead to something. That even now, in this moment, you are gathering material for a meaning that does not yet exist. The new year is here. The calendar has flipped. The number has changed. Nothing is different. Everything is different. You are standing at the beginning of a chapter that has not been written. The pages are blank. The story could go anywhere. You do not know what will happen this year. You do not know what accidents await you, what failures, what surprises, what losses, what gifts. The universe will not tell you in advance. The universe does not know. The universe does not care. But you will take whatever happens and make it mean something. You will connect the dots backward, drawing lines that did not exist until you drew them. You will look at the chaos and find the pattern. You will take the lead and make it gold. Not because you have to, because you can, because that is what you are. A meaning-making creature in a universe that makes no meaning on its own. The feeling that things happen for a reason is not a proof of cosmic design. It is a proof of human artistry. It is evidence that somewhere inside you, an author is at work, taking notes, gathering material, waiting for the right moment to reveal what it all meant. You do not know the reason yet. You cannot. The story is not finished. But you will find it. You will create it. You will look back at this moment, this year, this chapter, and you will understand. Not because the understanding was always there, because you put it there. Because that is what alchemists do. And if you are in the middle of something right now, something that feels meaningless, something that feels like pure suffering, something you cannot imagine ever redeeming, I want to say this: you do not have to find the meaning today. You do not have to understand why this is happening. You do not have to pretend it is good or necessary or part of a plan. You just have to survive it. You just have to keep going. You just have to trust that the author inside you is taking notes, gathering material, waiting for the moment when the meaning can be made. It might take years. It might take decades. It might never come in the form you expect. But you have transformed things before. You have taken the wreckage of previous chapters and built something from them. You have looked at old suffering and found it was the foundation of present joy. You know how to do this. You have been doing it your whole life. The feeling that things happen for a reason is not a lie. It is a memory. A memory of all the times you made the reason yourself. A memory of your own power. The universe does not have a plan for you, but you have a plan for you. You are writing it right now. Every moment, every breath, every decision to keep going. And one day, you will look back at this moment. You will see how it connected to everything that came after. You will understand what it meant, not because the meaning was there all along, because you put it there, because you are the alchemist, because you always were.